Okay, so I want to say something really quick before this episode starts. When I originally tried to upload episode 1 of Anime Abyss for Witch Hunter Robin, Bandai, who owns the rights to the anime Witch Hunter Robin, kept blocking my video. So it forced my hand to just upload it to BitChute, which is where it was for a while. I decided to come back in between making Anime Abyss episodes to come back to my older uploads that I couldn't upload before because of the fact that the way anime content is treated on YouTube specifically is very wishy-washy as far as what they allow and what they don't. So certain companies don't care as much, whereas some companies like Bandai really do care about protecting their IP, and regardless of whether it's fair use or not, which this video should fall under that. They don't really care. Japan doesn't really care about fair use. They don't even have fair use laws in Japan. So as far as they're concerned, it does not really matter. If they want your video gone, they will just delete it. But that doesn't mean that I couldn't do anything about that. So I decided to go through the video and go through the entirety of the video to edit the clips, certain clips of the anime, changing the color grade, adjusting the size of the windows of the actual video, stuff like that. Putting an overlay here and there, just to try and bypass the copyright system. I know it's annoying, and I know people don't like it. I know I'm gonna get comments about it, asking me why I did those things. I did that to avoid getting my video totally ripped off the internet by companies that couldn't care less about their own properties. They just don't want anyone else to upload their properties in any other way other than the way they intend it. So, anyways, I explained it long enough. I hope that's good enough an explanation for you. In any case, thank you guys for watching and enjoy the video. Anime.
You think you can get me that easily?
The window! Shoot! I don't believe it. Thermoptic camouflage.
Anime has been a huge part of my life and has been a huge reason for why I am the way I am today. But I would not be the first to admit that I'm not a huge fan of all anime. When it comes down to it, I did grow up at a certain time where my first introduction to anime as a child was titles that were shown on TV, but meant to appeal to a younger audience. Sailor Moon, Digimon, Pokemon, and of course the ubiquitous Dragon Ball Z. But I didn't even think of that stuff as anime. I just thought it was cartoons for slightly older kids. You want to know what anime really changed my view on anime and got me to really pay attention? It wasn't shit like this. It was stuff like this.
How do you like that? Huh?
When it comes down to it, it was because of shows and animated films like this that really shaped what my view of animation was as a whole, showing that the medium could be more than just a kids show. I can't tell you how shocking it was to see titles like Ninja Scroll, Ghost in the Shell, and of course even Akira, but I can tell you it definitely changed my perception of animation forever. But if I had to pinpoint the exact moment that I became an anime fan, it would have to be due to one of the most influential anime blocks in American TV history, Adult Swim. This was the block, aside from Toonami, another influential block we'll get to in the future, that really shaped my tastes in anime.
I mean, let's think about the anime they showed. Mobile Suit Gundam, Full Metal Alchemist, Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex, The Big O, Fooly Cooly, Samurai Champloo, Trigun, Cowboy fucking Bebop. Throw a dart. If you watched this block back in the day, from 9 p.m. to midnight, you were guaranteed to see some of the most influential shows that shaped a generation of otaku for years to come.
But not every single one of them stands the test of time for one reason or another. I mean, how many anime have you probably watched on any anime block where you remember it for some specific reason, but you don't remember why? You probably don't even know what it was about. Well, in today's inaugural episode, that has to deal with a specific anime that I remembered just recently, that I went out of my way to pick it up on Amazon and got the whole series and watched it for this review. Which anime? Witch Hunter Robin.
Witch Hunter Robin was originally aired on Adult Swim back in the day from 2004 to 2005, with a run of only 26 episodes, licensed in America by Bandai and produced by Sunrise.
Oh, you a bounty hunter? Or some animal rights chump?
You know, you really make me laugh, Hakeem. Risking your life for a dog that's only worth a fistful of oolong.
What's it to you?
Nothing but a giggle.
Yep, that's Sunrise.
Admittedly, I paid no attention to production studios and who did what back in the day, but when I found out that Sunrise produced this show later down the line, it became the inspiration for why I wanted to see the show again and to do this review. It also goes to note that the show is directed by Shuko Murase, mostly known for his character design work and key animation for various Sunrise properties and other shows such as Gundam Wing, Street Fighter II the movie, and his second fully directed work, Ergo Proxy. The show was also written by Aya Yoshinaga, who actually worked on a number of memorable shows, such as Full Metal Alchemist, Wolf's Rain, Golden Kamuy, and even as a scriptwriter for Cowboy Bebop.
Now with that pedigree, that should make for an absolute classic anime, right? But for the life of me, I just could not remember what the show was actually about, which is what caused me to get this copy in my hands. And usually if I can't remember a story, it usually means one of two things. A, it's boring, or B, it's bad, or both. So, how is it? Well, let's take a look.
Witch Hunter Robin follows the eponymous 15-year-old Robin Senna, who's, well, a witch hunter.
And yes, she is 15. Keep that in mind, Rule 34 hentai artists.
Who is sent from Italy by an organization dedicated to hunting witches called Solomon, to their Japanese branch, the STNJ, to replace another hunter that is no longer present. The other main characters at play are as follows: Not Batman's butler, Big Boss Zaizen, Karasuma the brunette, Dojima the blonde, Super Hacker Mike, Haruto the spaz, and Amon the broody. The SDNJ is a shadowy organization that is dedicated not to killing witches, but apprehending them using non-lethal means, using a substance called Orbo that they use in their guns to dispatch of their threats, and using them to deflect attacks by wearing the stuff around their necks in a pendant. Like most shows of its type, it takes on the Monster of the Day format, in which the team does some research on a suspect who is thought to be a witch, doing some detective work, eventually leading up to a fight with said witch, and in the first episode we get to see what Robin is capable of.
basement.
It appears that the result of the Ring of Ogam has been rewritten into Sieg. This is my field.
Damn you all!
Pretty much this is the cycle of every episode of the show. But I have to address something. The first 7 episodes are boring.
While I do appreciate it when stories take their time to build up the world they live in and the characters that live in it, it doesn't do enough with the time it's given to make me more invested than I already am. For example, it takes its time to bring up certain details like the fact that all the hunters at the STNJ are seeds, people that have the genes of witches but their powers haven't been fully awakened yet. For example, one of the hunters, Karasuma, has the ability to scry objects, which allows her to learn information from objects directly that others have interacted with, which has allowed the hunters to be able to find their suspects, and this is used over the course of the show.
Yeah, that's all good and dandy and all, and adds a lot more flavor to the lore, but let's really think about this. What are the other hunters' powers?
Now, granted, being a seed doesn't mean that you will have powers, just that you can. So I understand the other side of the argument. But that goes out the window when you consider the opening scene of the first episode. Literally, Amon is on street level and somehow ends up going from the ground floor to above the suspect as if he leaped several stories up from the ground floor to the building. How the fuck did he do that? And if that's not what happened, where did he come from?
And you want to know what the hell of it is? It's never brought up again. Like, ever.
This is overall indicative of some of the issues I have with the show. It'll bring up cool ideas, only not to do anything with it. In fact, on episode 5, Smells Like a Wandering Spirit,
That was your one show. That was your one.
one of the suspects is a witch that causes people to lose their shit with despair and ends up killing themselves. Throughout the episode, they run into a bum in the homeless camp a few times that gives them info, and even Haruto almost ends up the same way, but Robin prevents him from offing himself. By the end of the episode, Robin, Amon, and the owner of Harry's, the cafe that they frequent throughout the show, ends up mentioning a man called Single Eye who leaves an odor, which is brought up several times in the episode, when he uses his craft. Robin ends up connecting the dots that it was the old man with the paperboy cap, and fuck all! The episode ends and that's it. It's never brought up again. Or how about the use of the character Toko? Toko is the roommate of Robin that is very seldom seen in the series. However, there are things about her that is very apparent. She knows Robin is a witch hunter, she knows what the SDNJ is, and even is a love interest of Amon's who ends up breaking it off with her because reasons. What's her importance to the show?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Literally, if you took her out of the show entirely, nothing would change. If that was the case, why is she even here?
Oh, I'll tell you why. She's used as bait to lure Robin into an ambush that nearly gets her killed, which also reveals to the viewer later on that she's actually Kaizen's daughter, who is then promptly swept aside and you never see her again. This is the mark of some lazy writing. Also, when it comes down to the characters themselves, they're not bad by any means. In fact, some of the characters do get some character development, such as how Robin turns out to have bad eyesight, which explains why in earlier episodes she couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, which she only figures out because Amon gave her a pair of glasses, or how Robin likes to keep her place clean and tidy because while she was training at Solomon HQ in Italy, one of her chores was to clean, so it ended up being a force of habit. Or how about Super Hacker Mike revealing in episode 3 after Robin asks him what the deal is with the collar and why he stays at the STNJ office every day, is because he actually hacked the STN mainframe and they ended up apprehending him, only allowing him not to go to prison if he works for the STN instead. but with the unfortunate side effect of being under house arrest. This reminds me of something else, I just can't remember what.
1:33 a.m. Tri-Optimum Security Forces apprehend the intruder.
Bam! Nostalgia blindsided you, didn't I? Well, at least some of you at least got that reference, I hope.
That being said, I feel there is just not enough focus on the character development of all the hunters. Despite there being a Monster of the Week format, it doesn't really use it to the fullest to get to learn about each individual character, which is just a bummer. I mean, tell me, what's memorable about Dojima other than she's dumb, blonde, and has a big mouth that can't keep a secret?
She's attractive, blonde, and can't keep a secret. She's a woman. Ayo!
Okay, I kid, but seriously, character development is one of the weaker aspects of the show, and its writing. Yet, it's not god-awful either. Nonetheless, I do have an issue with it.
It's also hard not to pay attention to these things when especially the animation goes from passable quality to muddy as all hell.
It's not when things are in motion that it looks bad. In fact, when the characters are moving and things are happening, it looks good, especially up close. But when things are still and slightly zoomed out is when the actual line work can look butt ugly at times. Part of me thinks this was a result of the production team still getting used to the switch to digital. Now, I can go over the apples and oranges comparisons of why I think traditional cell painting and digital cell painting is good and bad on both sides. That being said, I don't need to go that far, as most anime from its time in the early to mid 2000s struggled with this as well just because it was new. It's a lot better now, and without shows like Witch Hunter Robin, we wouldn't have anime that looks as good or better than it does now than it did back then. But nevertheless, early use of digital animation really didn't help to future-proof shows of its ilk. It also doesn't help when the CG backgrounds they used look dated as hell.
Seriously, they use CG models for their backgrounds, which they then filtered to overlay the animation on top of it. But it just doesn't hold up in today's day and age, and it just looks really not that great. And it's probably because of this reason why Witch Hunter Robin never got a Blu-ray release.
Now, to be fair, this show is not the worst offender of early use of CG in anime. Hint, hint! But looking at it through today's lens, it doesn't look that great. While we're on the topic of art direction, I'm not the hugest fan of the character designs. To be fair, I do think that they are distinct enough that you can tell each character apart, but they're not the most inspired part of the show either. In a way, I kinda get it. The show is supposed to be more gloomy and atmospheric and rooted in reality, so to have more realistic designs that make them more grounded makes more sense. But in all honesty, aside from the main character Robin, who has the best and most distinct design, aside from Blondie I guess, who's gonna remember Haruto, Mike, or Amon? In fact, thinking about it, I feel the best example of an IP that did it better was Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex. The characters and the setting lends itself to being more rooted in reality and feeling grounded while in contrast with the futuristic setting, and the characters still being memorable. Once you're done watching Ghost in the Shell, at least you'll remember Motoko Kusanagi or Bato, or hell, even Togusa for that matter.
Witch Hunter Robin? Well, there's probably a reason why you probably don't remember it as well as you probably could have. That being said, you know what I think on episodes 1 through 7. But how is the rest of the show? Is there actually anything good about this show? Yeah, there are.
Despite my issues with the show, there are really good things about it though. For example, I really like the intro and outro themes, Shell probably becoming one of my favorite anime opening songs in recent memory.
Oh no! What happened? Oh no, how terrible! That's just awful! How terrible! Oh no!
And the soundtrack overall is really well scored. The music being written by Taku Iwasaki, who did scores for other known shows like Gurren Lagann, Soul Eater, and even the second arc of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure show, Battle Tendency. Also, the voice acting is really well done overall. I mean, look at this list. Kari Walgren, Crispin Freeman, Johnny Young Bosch, Michelle Ruff, Tom Weiner, Steve fucking Bloom. I mean, seriously, one look at the cast list lets you know that they had a wonderful cast of people to voice the roles. And overall, it's really good.
But
Robin and Amon are probably the weakest performances in the entire show, which, to be fair, isn't Kari Wahlgren or Crispin Freeman's fault, as it's faithful to the original Japanese dub, but these two actors are really good at what they do. I mean, for fuck's sake, Kari voiced characters like Haruka from Fooly Cooly and Fu from Samurai Champloo in the span of 3 years, and Crispin Freeman has voiced Alucard from Hellsing and Hellsing Ultimate, and...
Oh, you're saying, give war a chance!
Yes, that too.
My point being that they have the range to at least be emotive, and it's not like they couldn't have done it, so it's just unfortunate that the characters were written and directed the way they were. Now, don't get it twisted, I think Robin and Amon are fine the way they are, and I think characters that aren't emotive can work really well when paired with characters that are mixed in with a well-written script. In fact, my favorite duo that represents this dichotomy is Mugen and Jin from Samurai Champloo. The reason they work so well together is the fact that not only do they have their own backstories, but they also are the polar opposite of each other. Mugen being wild and brash, and Jin calm and collected.
It's like peanut butter and jelly. They go well together. Amon and Robin, on the other hand, not so much. This was supposed to be me saying that I actually liked the voice acting, right?
Okay, well, how about the story? Well, surprisingly, by the time episode 8 hits, that's when the story starts to get a lot better and more engaging. That's right, it's one of those it gets better later sort of shows. Instead of me going over every episode, I thought I would at least point out the best and worst episodes of the show. As far as my favorite episodes, I feel it's a tie between Faith and Sign of the Craft, episode 8 and 9 respectively. Episode 8's plot centers around a witch who happens to be a surgeon at a hospital who I'll call Dr. Steve, who ends up kidnapping people in order to transfer the life energy into his patients who happen to be terminal young children. Of course, the STNJ gets wind of it and starts doing their detective work, suspecting that the witch may be working at a hospital, as all the recent victims happen to be individuals that recently were discharged from the hospital, also noting that all the victims have morally dubious pasts. Dr. Steve and his partner plan on who the next target is going to be, settling on a recent patient that happens to be part of the Yakuza, so they can save another patient who's terminally ill. Steve's partner takes him to dinner and manages to drug his alcohol, allowing them to drag him to the car to bring him back to the hospital. However, the hunters manage to get a beat on them and start tailing them until they get spooked, only to crash the car because of the drugged Yakuza in his stupor grabbing the wheel. Dr. Steve and his partner retreat into the nearby building under construction. Eventually, Robin corners Dr. Steve, but his partner manages to get the drop on Robin, nearly wrecking the scaffolding completely on the side of the building, putting her in a precarious position, but alive nonetheless. While Robin is okay, unfortunately Steve's partner is not. But Steve, in his oath as a doctor, ends up sacrificing his own life to save his partner, and to be honest, it's really sad actually, as in the end, while the character did some bad things, he only did what he did in order to save his patients' lives while getting rid of people the world would be better off without in the process, ending up a victim of tragic irony. The episode ends on a somber note. As for episode 9, the plot centers around multiple victims who's been burned alive, all of them having ties to one another. Eventually, the hunters find out that the suspect named Aki, a girl they've been looking for, actually happens to be dead, sending the hunters on a wild goose chase to find out who the real suspect is. In the end, after doing some more research, the 3 victims had a lot in common, and turned out to have a relation to the suspect who was supposed to be dead, revealing that the 3 were involved in a child trafficking ring for harvesting organs, and Aki happened to be killed as a result. However, after some more research by super hacker Mike, a revelation is made that there wasn't just one Aki, but 2 Akis, identical twins. The other sister named Saki, and she happens to be after the last man who had ties to the trafficking ring. Robin and Amon go to the location they think the suspect would be, only to find that Saki has killed the man. Robin and Saki end up in a fight of the craft, Robin and Saki realizing they both have the same powers as each other. In the end, Amon puts her down in the distraction to apprehend her. The episode ends with Robin coming to the conclusion that Saki isn't really a bad person at heart, but rather a victim of circumstance and revenge.
I really like these 2 episodes. In fact, it's these 2 episodes that really are great representatives of what the show can be like when the production team and the script writing is tightly done and at the top of their game. As for the worst episode...
Separate Lives. I'm just not a huge fan of this episode, as it just feels like a wasted time. The episode, while I do appreciate the change of pace, just doesn't do a lot in the way of character development, let alone having any sort of consequence for anyone involved. And no, having Robin and Dojima dressed up as waitresses and showing a little more skin doesn't fill the void. Long story short, the reason Robin and Dojima is working at the cafe to help the owner of Henry's is to do undercover work so they can apprehend a man they suspect of being a witch who apparently frequents the establishment. In the end, Robin and Dojima is sent home after a guy walks in as they're about to close, and the owner lets them know that everything's fine. Turns out the suspect they were looking for turns out to be the owner's son, who resented his father for putting distance between the two because of the fact that he's a witch, but ends up forgiving him, revealing he had been stabbed when he had a run-in with the other suspicious man that the hunters had an eye on earlier in the episode. Dying in the owner's arms, the owner asking him for forgiveness.
It should be more impactful as an episode, but since we don't really know much about the owner of Henry's, and because of the fact that there's just not much going on in the episode to begin with, it just kind of loses all steam and ends up becoming one of the weakest episodes of the entire show, despite how moving it's obviously trying to be.
Overall, though, when it comes to the story in general, I think it does a fairly good job, especially by the time episode 10 comes around.
Speaking of which, for those who do not want the show spoiled for themselves and would like to see it for themselves, get out now.
It's by this time in the series that the show really starts to pick up, and starts to paint a bigger picture of what's going on with the SDNJ and why they hunt witches. In episode 12, Robin ends up meeting an old lady named Methuselah, who turns out to be a witch that has been alive since the Salem witch trials, and is very powerful and wise. Methuselah giving her a history lesson on witches and waxes poetic about how witches are not the products of the devil, but of God. But because of their immense power over the human race, were dubbed as evil by humanity, and were hunted because of it. And Robin is just like the others that they've been hunting this whole time. Although, Robin rejects the notion and even argues that there is nothing wrong with persecuting those that have used their power for evil, and that she isn't like them. But Methuselah lets on that Solomon, the overarching organization dedicated to hunting witches, are actually up to something, and gives Robin a MacGuffin called the Fragment of Wisdom, saying it will show her the truth, dying to Robin's craft powers as a result of the visions she was given by Methuselah. Later on, Robin and Amon are on a hunt that's different than the one she's used to, and where it seems like she's the one actually being hunted instead, being shot at by somebody. She tries to get the jump on her shooter, but is nowhere to be seen. She picks up one of the shell casings only to reveal that it has a runic symbol on it. Amon later on scolds her for letting the suspect go, but Robin protests that she was being shot at, which Amon says is BS because he didn't hear the gunshots, which of course makes her suspicious. Later on, it is revealed that the bullets that were used in the attempt to kill her happen to be the same bullets that the STNJ used to use when hunting witches. This eventually leads to Robin being ambushed in her own apartment with Toko being used as bait by some heavily armed goons. Toko being shot and put in critical condition, and Robin nearly being killed. But her pals end up saving the day, chasing off the goons, in which it's revealed that they were using the same bullets from before. Eventually, while Robin is staying at the office because of how unsafe it is at her apartment, ends up being raided by the same goons, leading to the gang being taken down one by one, but not killed. The goons about to put a bullet in Robin is saved by Amon, taking her to a secret exit so she could escape, before letting her know what's going on.
The STNJ is evil!
Okay, maybe that's an oversimplification, but nonetheless, this is where the story really hooked me in and didn't let me go. And for what it's worth, I was really surprised by that, and enjoyed the plot to the very end. The stakes are finally being raised. The gang now has something else to lose, and in the end, fight to find out the truth behind what the STNJ is up to. And what is actually going on in the veiled factory that houses all the witches they hunted so far? And what is the origins of Robin?
Seriously, it's really good stuff. In fact, it's because of this that it really kept me wanting to see this all the way through. If only it ended on such a high note.
Now, I'm skipping over a lot of stuff here for the sake of brevity, but I'm gonna do my best to go into this as best as I can. Later on in the show, after doing a lot of detective work to find out what Zyzen and the factory are up to, Robin ends up discovering something called Project Robin, which at first all they know is that it has something to do with genetically modifying genes in an attempt to make witches, but not knowing what the actual end goal is, only knowing that it was successful. During all of this, the gang starts running into goons that are now equipped with orbo guns, which normally humans were not able to use, although with some side effects, something Zyzen is trying to fix, which somehow Project Robin has something to do with what they're trying to accomplish, as Zyzen has a vested interest in recovering data off of an encrypted disk that the creator of Project Robin stored info on. In the end, the gang plan a massive raid with aid from the main branch of Solomon in order to stop Zyzen's plan to weaponize the Orbo on a mass scale. It's eventually revealed to the gang that the Orbo that they've been using to hunt witches actually came from the witches they hunted, essentially being used as human cows to produce Orbo. Robin and Amon eventually confront Zyzen looking to find answers as to why Zyzen is doing what he's doing, to which he plays the video off of the encrypted disk, which is of the man who's the head of Project Robin.
And this is where I feel they made their most egregious error. They decided to explain something that didn't need to be explained.
Now, I'm not against writers trying to explain things and having those aha moments, but this is just not one of them. In fact, I would have been fine with it if they just left it at the video ending prematurely, leaving more of a mystery, as in most mystery stories, sometimes the answer is less satisfying than the mystery itself.
But no, they just blow their wad instead.
I attempted to recreate a witch that had their innate powers and had the ability to pass on its genes. I met a hunter named
Karasuma, are you trying to betray me?
absolutely beautiful.
I'm not betraying you.
Her body had been frail since
Can't you
childhood,
see?
had been
I was
given only
terrified of
a few
losing
years
myself.
of
I had to cling to something. If I didn't,
But it was those abnormal
I was afraid that I'd gradually fall to pieces and go insane. I knew that you were lying. I never believed you for an instant.
I can do nothing to save her life. But within her now, a new life is growing who may be able to change the future. A child I've designed.
Able to change the future.
Seems almost fantastic. And yet my mind...
There is only one future, and impure witches like you will have no place in it.
its power to
Neither do you, nor you.
Not its power per se, but rather the ability of the witches to once again inherit the species. They are terrified that this child will become the Eve of witches. Believing
You're
that
supposed
she
to be
will
some sort of
dangerous
Eve
lives
of witches?
So, let's recap.
In short, the reason Project Robin exists was to make the ultimate witch, a literal devil or god, using Maria's genes, Robin's mom, as a base, because witches over 3,000 years ago was the heirs to humanity and were regarded as gods, but because of genetic mutation, ended up becoming unable to pass on their specific genes to other humans, and as such, humans ended up becoming the heirs to humanity, so Toto's goal was to make Robin so that a witch could have babies and pass down their genes to the next generation, and...
Oh god. It hurts.
I mean, was this Robin as an overglorified witch baby factory reveal really necessary? It also makes no sense, as witches are already capable of giving birth to other witches. Granted, I get the point of Project Robin was to make a witch that is capable of guaranteeing a 100% witch birth rate, unlike the born seeds who have the potential to be a witch, but not guaranteed at all. So I get that. But again, what was the actual point of this reveal, other than to shoe in a humanity is the actual monster's story turn?
But what makes it all the more worse is that this entire plot point is rendered entirely pointless.
No, really. After Zyzen loses his shit to the actual truth of the matter, the factory is set to completely collapse. So Robin, Amon, and Karasuma now need to escape. But Robin ends up stopping in one of the halls because she hears their screams and...
Maria told me something. She said that if she could truly change the future with a power that's lying dormant within her, she wanted to pass it on to this child. As my final gamble, I have decided to entrust our unborn child to Giuliano.
I'm amazed you guys made it out.
Where are Amon and Robin?
What do you mean? Weren't they supposed to be with you two guys?
So then, they're still inside.
Don't worry about them. There's no way those two are dead.
But how can you be so sure?
I don't know. Something just tells me.
Huh?
Oh, what fucking bullshit.
The fucking balls they had to pull this shit on us, on the vein to have a are they, aren't they alive trope, is just lazy. You expect me to believe that despite Karasuma being with both Robin and Amon as they were all escaping the facility, they just disappear off screen and she doesn't even know what happened to them? Here's my rebuttal. God, and I thought the ending to Mass Effect 3 was bad. It kind of makes me wonder if the reason this ending feels so rushed is because they wasted their fucking time on the witch baby factory plot point. Ugh. Well, in any case, the day is saved. The factory is no more, the gang goes back to hunting witches, even though they don't have Orbo anymore as the factory is gone, so how they're hunting them I don't even know, but all's well that ends well. The end.
Well, that's one way to end a series. Ugh. But I started this review to ask one simple question. Is Witch Hunter Robin any good? Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Warts and all, I do think the anime is a lot better than I expected it to be. While I do think this anime has its issues, and good God, that ending was terrible, ultimately, despite its faults, it does manage to entertain. It's just a shame that all of its faults keep it from really becoming a classic. If anything, if a show desperately needed the ultimate Brotherhood reboot remake treatment, I think Witch Hunter Robin would be a prime target for this. But alas, it seems very unlikely. If you want to get your hands on it, the complete series DVD collection is widely available and costs usually $40. So if you want to give it a shot, I'd say go for it. It's not great, it's not terrible, but it's good.
Oh man, this was one hell of an anime to choose to do a review for the first review on this channel, but next time, we're going to do a palate cleanser. Something that is not only way more fun and way more entertaining, but on top of that is something that is just pure balls to the wall, unadulterated fun. Till next time.